It's waxing lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Dutch. I'm your host, Mains, and my colleague, sweating in the danger zone in Rainford, to Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
The danger zone's like the gates of hell. Jesus wept, it's hot.
The classic.
And
classic
you know how
UK
cold this
summer
house is?
Yeah, the classic UK summer of moaning about what a shit summer we're having, and then the 3 days of the year it's hot, everyone dying.
Well, yeah, but you know, it's very hard to keep a stiff upper lip when it's melted past your kneecap.
Maybe this is the start of the apocalypse after today's news. I'm hoping it is.
Yeah, no politics, please.
No politics, please. But you can probably work out what day it is here. In the UK, so as we said, UK is not designed for weather of any sort, with the exception of it being around 15 degrees and wet. Neil, after last week talking AFC South, this week it's NFC South. Again, an argument that this could be one of the best divisions in football. So we will do our usual review. We also have a classic Weird World, which when I read it reminded me of you. We'll probably find out why as we get onto the story.
I'm intrigued.
Let's go straight to it, Neil. Headline: Stolen wallet reunited with woman 75 years later. Could be you, apart from the fact yours wouldn't have been stolen, it was hidden. Truth is often stranger than fiction. Nobody knows this better than 89-year-old Betty Sissom, great name, who was returned her lost wallet 75 years after it was stolen. In a project to convert the then Centrela High School building to a church, a plumber discovered a stash of not one, not two, but 15 wallets stashed in the wall of a girl's bathroom. The wallets were stripped of all money, but personal artifacts like student IDs and photos were left untouched, probably due to the fact you couldn't use them to buy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The IDs identified the wallets as belonging to students of the high schools in the 1940s. Neil, what's the longest you've ever lost something when it was returned to you?
See, I did lose my wallet once overnight, and I got a phone call from the police on a Saturday morning telling me that they'd found it, and they said, "But there's no money in it." I went, "Oh, it's definitely mine then." There was no money. There was no money in it when I had it, officer. I honestly don't know because, as you know, being not possessive, but being how should I put it, careful.
Frugal.
If I spend money on something, I know damn well where it is at all times. My car, my phone, my house. I know where it is.
Yeah, I'm not one of them people who are like, oh, I've been wondering where that was. Like, what do you mean? Like, how do you not know where it is?
No. If you've been wondering where it was, you lost it and didn't need it.
Exactly. That's the thing. I probably lost stuff that I didn't need lots of times. However, I've never really lost something that I desperately needed. I have a tendency to misplace items. I always think when you come in drunk and you put your wallet in a different place than you usually put it, and then you spend the next 4 hours while you're awake with a hangover trying to find out why you would, left it in the downstairs toilet.
Because there must have been a good reason at the time.
That's what I'm saying, right? Drunk Paul must have had a reason.
Yeah.
The question is, sober, hungover Paul has not got a clue what it was.
Yeah, and the only way to tap into what Drunk Paul's thinking was to become Drunk Paul. But in this mutually exclusive world, Drunk Paul and Sober Paul can never exist on the same existential plane. Therefore, we'll never know the answer. It's like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The question to the ultimate, the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything cannot be known in the same universe as the actual question to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. They cancel each other out. Mutual annihilation.
I think that's absolutely nailed on, Neil. As always, we love a Weird Whale story. So if you've got a Weird Whale story you would like to share with the world, tweet us at waxing_lyrical or individually at ndutton13 or me at mainsy7. Neil, NFC South time. Let's get ready with the previews. usual fare, let's remind everyone, for those who haven't listened to the 3 previous ones we've done this year, if you haven't, what the heck have you been doing?
Yeah, come on now.
Let's play a game. We're going to talk about the ins and out for each team. One big question. We're then going to focus, as always, on fantasy, looking at who is breaking out and who is breaking down. And then we will define whether we believe these teams will be most likely discussed by draftniks in Week 17, in the Super Bowl week, or not at all. Let's start with Atlanta, Neil. The Falcons ins, they drafted Caleb McGarry, a tackle. They got James Carpenter and Luke Stocker. Out, Andy Levitri, Brooks Reed, and everyone's favourite, second back, Tevin Coleman. Big question, Neil. Could the Falcons be back to Super Bowl form?
Offensively, yes. I mean, they were explosive on offense last year. I mean, Matt Ryan was, a fantasy star because he just kept slinging the ball through the air because they had no ground game to speak. As you say, Tevin Coleman was a good number 2, but when given the chance to step up to be the number 1 guy, wasn't up to it. They had, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, scoring touchdowns left, right and centre. The big problem was that they couldn't protect Matt Ryan and they couldn't force open running lanes for the running backs. Defensively, they were absolutely ravaged by injury. And it's hard to say because on paper, their offense looks really good. On paper, if it's fit, their defense looks really good. However, if you're a head coach and in the course of one off season, you fired your defensive coordinator, your offensive coordinator, and your special teams coordinator, when do you start realising that the problem might be you?
It's an issue, right? I think sometimes teams have windows of time, and some of them are really long and some of them are short, and you just don't know at that point in time which one it is. I think the Falcons are a good offensive team. The issue with the defense last year, couldn't stay fit and couldn't stay on the field. They've made changes. I like Dan Quinn, but I sometimes think, and you never want to go over a situation 28-3 in the Super Bowl and not winning. But it's not that it happened per se, because it happened. It's the knock-on effect of it happening. I sometimes look at, I'll just talk about Liverpool Football Club, why not? They got to a European Cup final and got beat. The best player got injured, and the goalkeeper threw 2 goals in. The next season, they then got 97 points and won the European Cup. Now, regardless of talent or whatever, it takes some serious mental fortitude to be able to do that. When you're 28-3 up, regardless of whatever you think about it, there's people in that roster who thought they'd won the Super Bowl, and they didn't. And I don't know if you can get over that. And we're now, this would be the 3rd year removed, and, they are good, but are they great? I'm not sure.
Well, the thing is, we have to look since then. They've played a playoff game in Philadelphia that was there for the taking for them.
Absolutely.
And they bottled that. Then, as I say, the thing is, it's similar to 2005. We'll change another sport and think about it. Similar mentality. 2005, the England team before the Ashes had a choice. Do they pick this brash, talented, cocky youngster, or do they go with a solid, steady veteran? So is it Kevin Peterson or Graham Thorpe? They went with Peterson, and Michael Vaughan said there was one important reason. It wasn't just that Peterson was ridiculously talented. It was that he'd never been tarred by losing to Australia. Mm-hmm. Whereas that is all Graham Thorpe knew, was getting beat by the Aussies. So it was a case of, if we lose Thorpe, we lose a bit of experience and whatnot, but we don't have anyone who's getting over those scars. And it's as you say, unless they're going to score points on people, especially they're going to throw the ball an awful lot. That's what Dirk Cotter does. You look at his numbers in the last time he was in Atlanta, they put up some serious numbers then. He put up numbers with Tampa Bay while he was there, even though, again, he was head coach of a team that had a trash defence. So we know they can score points. It's a question of, can they protect Matt Ryan? Can they run the ball, if they want to? Why anyone bother, I don't know. And can they stop teams occasionally? And that's Dan Quinn's, that's where he made his money.
Let's move fantasy style, Neil. Who's going to be breaking out on the Atlanta Falcons?
This is a team that's one of those, as I say, it looks like it's full of people in the passing game that you want a piece of. Julio Jones is going to go late first round. Calvin Ridley is probably third, fourth round. Matt Ryan is going to be a mid to late round quarterback, and you're going to want to get him. For me, the bit of value is Austin Hooper. Now, as I say, we know tight end it's a dumpster fire. And if you actually listen to the latest episode of the Late Round podcast with JJ Zacharyson, he had Rich Rebar on, and he talked about how tight end scoring, targets, receptions have gone down in each of the last 2 years as more running backs get thrown the ball. They've picked up the slack from tight ends. But, as I say, Austin Hooper at the moment, he's going as tight end 11 at the end of the 10th round. I'm sorry. We've seen that it's a low bar to get. Say 4 catches, 40 yards and a touchdown. You're probably going to be a tight end 1. But he's a cheap way to tap into what should be an explosive offense.
Who's breaking down, Neil?
Well, breaking down quite literally is Devonta Freeman. He's the running back 17 going off the board at the moment. These ADP figures are courtesy of Fancy Football Calculator, by the way. At the end of the 3rd round, Devonta Freeman had 2 seasons and then has had 2 very poor seasons, health-wise and production. Production mostly linked to his health. I don't understand how you can take him at this current ADP based on his last 2 years. He's undersized. He's not a great athlete. He put an awful lot into his game, got an awful lot out of himself, but is 1 concussion away from having serious problems in his life after football. I don't think he's worth that price because I really don't think they're going to run the ball that much anyway. It's not the way Dirk Cotter does business.
Neil, are the Atlanta Falcons more likely to be discussed by draftniks in Week 17, in the Super Bowl, or not at all?
I think Week 17, I think they're going to be in with a shout if they can stay healthy. If Dan Quinn can muster up some decent defence himself, because he's going to be serving as defence coordinator, if he can do that and not lose sight of the job a head coach actually has to do, this team can score points on anyone. It's just a question of can their defence live up to the bargain. So I think they're going to be in the playoff hunt at the end of the season and in the hunt for the division.
The over/under is 8.5, which is I guess about average. You look at them and think, yeah, they're a team that can score a lot of points. They are a team that have and he said top echelon quarterback, and I don't know if that's right. I don't mean that disparity to Matt Ryan. I just think he's just that level below. They are a good team. I think they will be discussed in. I think they'll be discussed in Week 17. I don't see them being more than just a borderline player team though. Next team, Neil, the Carolina Panthers. Changed ins. They drafted Brian Burns, defensive end. They got Matt Paredes and Gerald McCoy out. Captain Munnerlyn and Devin Funchess. The big question is the whole season of the Carolina Panthers dependent on Cam Newton's shoulder. Well,
if you've watched All or Nothing, which came out last week, which looks back at the 2018 Carolina Panthers, then the answer to that question last year would have been once Cam went down, or once Cam started to drop off, the team went into the toilet. They were 6-3. Was it 6-3 or 6-2? 6-2, I think we were.
6-2, yeah.
That culminated in that 17-point comeback against the Eagles that only after watching the episode of All or Nothing did I remember how much it boiled my piss, how much the Eagles lost that game. But then he started to struggle with his shoulder. And then, his numbers started going down. He was still completing passes, but he wasn't running. And we know that if you take that away from Cam Newton, you've pretty much taken Superman's cape off him. Now, they've got some good pieces in part. He did show that he was meshing well with North Turner, which I think this time last year you and I didn't think was going to happen.
No, we didn't. No, and I think we should be truthful about that. We thought that was a marriage made in hell, and it worked really well.
Yeah, hats off to both of them. A person, Cam being open to the advice of someone who we know can coach offense, but also a coach who'd never had a player like Cam before. Now, we know that this team, it fell off, but they've got some really exciting young skill players, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, Christian McCaffrey. He only just missed out on doing the 1,000 last year. You could argue, of course, would he have done that if Newton had been fully healthy? Well, who knows? Let's find out. If that's a way of keeping Cam healthy, then ride McCaffrey. So, again, it's a competitive division, but they have shown in the past that they can hang in it. They're slightly odd in that they're changing from a 4-3 defense, which has been Ron Rivera's wheelhouse the whole time he's been a defensive coach or a head coach. They're changing to a 3-4, and they brought in Gerald McCoy, who's a 4-3 defensive tackle, to play in a 3-4. So I don't know how that's going to take. That may take a little time to meld, but this team has talent, and if Cam Newton is healthy, then we've seen where he can take this team. I mean, you look, these receivers are probably far more talented than the ones he took to a Super Bowl.
I think that's a good point, Neil. Really, is that in previous years we've thought that this team was solely dependent on Cam Newton. Now, obviously, it needs Cam Newton. That was proven, as you said. They went from 6-2 to not in the playoffs. However, I think the skill players that they have mean that some of it isn't as difficult for Cam. So, is it perfect? No. Would you prefer that he was fully fit and you knew he was fully fit? It wasn't an issue. Of course you would. But, these things don't work like that. I think the Christian McCaffrey thing, not that it snuck up on me, because I was hiring him to start, really is a benefit for the Carolina Panthers. I think, I look forward to the conversation either next year or the year after of do you pay him? Just so you know, the answer is always no on this, especially as you are giving Christian McCaffrey 7 billion touches. So unfortunately, in this world, you probably ride him and then let him become someone else's problem. But
this is a running backs don't matter podcast.
I'm afraid so. They matter in terms of you need them to be a functional offense, but it doesn't necessarily matter who the name on the back of the shirt is. That's what we mean by don't matter. Yeah. We know you need them, and I think you look at certain fantasy angles, and if you're in PPR and in DFS especially, there's the likes of McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley, if we use those two as the major examples, Alvin Kamara, who we'll come on to momentarily. I think you have to have them, one of those three in your team every single week. That's just a nailed on thing. But like in the grand scheme of things, you could also pick someone from the 15th round who does just as much.
Yeah, so I'd say they're all essential, but none of them are necessary.
Correct. On to the fantasy angle, Neil. Who's breaking out on the Carolina Panthers?
Well, he's not a breakout, but Cam Newton is going at the quarterback 11. If Cam Newton is healthy, somebody call the police, because that's a robbery. I don't understand why, if Cam Newton is healthy, how you justify picking 10 quarterbacks ahead of him. This is laughable. So he's going at, say, QB 11 at the end of the 9th round. If he is healthy, there's not a chance in hell he is the QB 11 in fantasy. He has never been the QB 11. But this is another team that's similar to the similar to the Tennessee Titans in that there looks to be value pretty much everywhere you look at it, apart from Christian McCaffrey. You could argue, if you want to take Christian McCaffrey first overall, I wouldn't stop you. But there's there's other young players to say DJ Moore. I think people need to start waking up to the fact that if Cam Newton is healthy, DJ Moore is going to be a thing. Curtis Samuel is going to be a thing. Ian Thomas is going to be a thing, and we'll get. I'll speak more about that in just a second.
So Neil, on that, I guess we're coming up to drafts. The UK Fantasy League for me, of 240 people, absolute astonishing number of people in a draft. It's up there with the Scott Fishbowl. Obviously, nowhere near as many, but a wonderful effort from the guys. And mine is the 29th of July. So if I get the first round pick, if I get the first pick in the draft, should I be looking at taking Christian McCaffrey?
If I have the first overall pick in any draft, I'm only picking between two people, not four. I'm picking between Ezekiel Elliott or Christian McCaffrey. Saquon Barkley is playing on a trash offense that you have to assume Daniel Jones is going to play games in this year. And Alvin Kamara, I have questions. I don't have any questions about the other two.
Okay, Neil, who's breaking down on the Carolina Panthers?
Again, it's breaking down in terms of, from a fantasy appeal, but Greg Olsen has missed exactly half the games over the last 2 seasons. He's twice broken his foot. He's had back problems. Ian Thomas came in last year and finished the season very well. He was the tight end 6 in terms of PPR points over the back end of the season. Take for that what you will. Tight ends, trash. And certainly in terms of fantasy points. But he showed, as the season went on, that even as Cam was breaking down, he was stepping up. I did write this week about why Ian Thomas is a screaming ad in Dynasty Leagues. I think there is a non-0% chance that Greg Olsen retires during training camp and ends up in a booth somewhere. Because we know it's happening anyway. I just think if he starts, maybe he has a day where his foot's hurting him and he just realizes, I don't actually need this anymore. So if that's the case, then Ian Thomas needs to be owned. But Greg Olsen's current ADP, while we seem to be expecting Cam Newton to be less than he was, we seem to be expecting Greg Olsen to be all that he was. These two cannot meet.
Neil, Carolina Panthers more likely to be discussed by draftniks in Week 17 in the Super Bowl or not at all?
I'm going to say again in Week 17. I think we've seen in the past that 3 teams have come out of this division. There's a good chance they're all 3 could come out again. And there's a very good chance, that it won't just be a case of one of them is miles ahead and the other 2 are fighting for second and third. I think this could be a 3-way fight to the end of the season. I think it's a very young, talented team led by a quarterback who's still got an awful lot left in him.
Over under 7.5, so Vegas thinks lesser than the Falcons, which surprises me. They both play. All the teams play the West, the NFC West, and the AFC South. Carolina also get the privilege of Washington. I think it's Week 17 again. I think this team's better than the Falcons, and if I was to rank them, this team will be ranked second in most likely to succeed in this division.
Well, I think as well, if you look at it, I would take Rivera over Quinn as a head coach.
Yeah.
And I'd take North Turner over Dirk Koetter as an offensive coordinator if it came down to that.
Agreed. On to the Saints. In New Orleans, the ins, Latavius Murray, Jared Cook, out, Mark Ingram, Kirk Coleman. The big question for the Saints is simple, really. Can the Saints get over the hump after the disappointment of the last 2 playoffs? Don't know if anyone remembers Miracle in Minneapolis, and I believe some guy got knocked the F out before a ball was thrown in a pretty important game last season against the Rams.
See, if we think the Falcons are still fighting the battles of 3 seasons ago, what are we saying about the Saints? It has to affect you. There has to be a feeling of it's never going to happen for us.
Yeah, I think my only riposte to that would be after the miracle in Minneapolis to pick yourself up off the floor and have the season that you had this season. Shows a little bit of intestinal fortitude. I'm impressed by that. Obviously, that's until something happens like that with the Rams. But not that you can explain that away, because you can't explain it away. But that is an out of your control situation. So if you look at Miracle in Minneapolis or 28-3, if we go back to the Falcons, they're kind of in their controls. Whereas this one, you could just say, oh, well, in our heads, if I'm Sean Payton, I'd be like, in our heads, we won that game. Like, so, you know what I mean? We won that game, and we would have won the Super Bowl. They wouldn't have. But you know what I mean? So you can actually sell it as that. I don't think you can sell the season before and the Falcon season similar.
Thing is, though, I mean, they were boat racing the Rams in the first half.
Just didn't score enough points. Just
didn't score enough points. They let them off the hook, and then in overtime, I'm pretty certain it wasn't the ref that threw the back-breaking Brett Favre style interception. I'm sure that was a Saints player.
Yeah, I think we just now, because you've seen Tom Brady, you just expect quarterbacks to go forever, and there is really a question, not a question about Drew Brees, but you start to, Father Time is undefeated. I know Tom Brady and his kale ice creams are coming close to defeating him, but I'm not sure all the other quarterbacks are going to meet that situation.
And Breeze did drop off as the season went on. He's lucky in the sense that they shot a lot of their bolts early to get themselves into so strong a position that by the time it was coming to the end of the season, it was almost like they could. I'm not saying they took the foot off the gas. Under no circumstances I suggest that's what they did. But when Breeze did hit a little bit of a bump, it didn't cripple the team so much.
Correct, Neil. Correct. From a fancy point of view, he's breaking out in Saints.
Well, he's a player I've not been a huge fan of in his previous stops. But we've seen what the workhorse back, as it were, for New Orleans, we've seen what that can do for fantasy. So that's why Latavius Murray, who's going as the running back 34 at the end of the 7th round, I think has value because Alvin Kamara, the first 4 weeks of last season, when he was dominating the backfield touches, he was getting the catches out the backfield, he was getting the goal line touches, he was phenomenal, he was fantastic. They didn't keep doing it. As soon as they got Mark Ingram back, they started mixing it in again. Now, I'm not saying that Alvin Kamara cannot be an every down workhorse. I'm just saying that when he was very good, but they didn't let him do it for long. Now, I just think, if Latavius Murray comes in, he's going to get a few carries. He might get a little bit of passing work, but that's pretty much going to be to Kamara. But they do mix him in, and he might get goal line work. We saw last year and the year before, when he was on the Vikings, even in part of a timeshare, he had standalone value when Dalvin Cook went down because he was getting the goal line back, he was getting goal line work, and he was scoring the touchdowns. So I think he's one of those people. I don't think he's one of those type of players that if you've started your draft with 3 wide receivers, I don't think he's going to be one of your first 2 running backs. I think if that's the case, you're in trouble, especially in standard scoring leagues. But I think if you want to play him as a running back 3 or flex, I think there'll be weeks where he will chip in. And we do know, as I say, that the Saints offense is still going to be bloody good. So he's a low-cost way of getting into it.
Who's breaking down, Neil?
Don't like Jared Cook's ADP. Middle of the 7th round, tight end 8. He has been good the last couple of years with the Raiders. Yeah, he was good. He's always flashed. But with the Raiders was his first chance really to be the focal point of an offense. Tight ends have not been great for the Saints, despite what people think. Since Jimmy Graham left, they've been functional. I mean, they talk up all these people in the world, Kobe Fleener, Ben Watson. But then ultimately they all end up losing red zone looks to Josh Hill. So I think that we saw last year that the Saints, as stupid as this sounds, but it is, bear with me, all they had was Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara, and that was it. Oh, terrible. You've got the best best wide receiver and one of the best running backs with one of the best quarterbacks. How do you sleep at night? But you can't just do that. You have to open it up. So there's a chance Cook might get some volume. And let's be honest, this is the best. He played with Aaron Rodgers. This is the second best quarterback he's going to have played with. I just think there are tight ends I would take at a similar time to Cook, and there's probably tight ends going later that I would take ahead of him.
Neil, New Orleans Saints more likely to be discussed by Draftniks in Week 17 in the Super Bowl or not at all?
We've seen how good their defense is, but we've seen a couple of occasions where it inexplicably just shuts down. As I say, they didn't keep their foot on the throat of the Rams last year, but I still think that there's a good chance they'll have the division locked up. They'll be in the playoffs weeks before everyone else. You would think so, even though, as I say, I do think it could be a 3-way race. But I think this team, I hate to use the phrase, this team is Super Bowl or bust.
Yeah, I'm with you, Neil. I look at them and think, this is a team that's as you said, surely got Super Bowl intentions. I don't think there's any other way around it. 10.5 they are, according to Vegas. Again, the schedule isn't horrific in terms of who they play in the NFC West and the AFC South. You'd expect them to be favoured in most games, although there's a lovely game Sunday, September 15th at the LA Rams. So tough start, to be fair. Week 2 at the Rams, week 3 at the Seahawks, and week 4 at home to Dallas. So if they come through that, then there's a chance this could be a 12-4, 13-3 outfit, and
And
again heading to the
yeah,
playoffs.
as you said last week, don't discount that they're going to play 9 games in a row.
Well, this is it. I look and think, okay, they're playing on the road games are Jacksonville, sunny. They're playing at the Bears in October, not great. At Tampa, that's fine. At Atlanta, dome. So these are places which are fine. Last 2 games are at Tennessee, at Carolina, which aren't great games for the Saints in terms of you don't particularly want to be playing Carolina on the road for your final game, and at Tennessee has a chance to be a really difficult game based on what we said about Tennessee last week. Final team, Neil, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
It's your turn to be high on them.
No, you've already given away the big question. Inns, head coach in Bruce Arians, Kangol himself. They drafted inside linebacker Devin White. They also got Ndamukong Suh and one of your favourites, Neil, Brashard Perryman. Outs, Deshaun Jackson, Gerald McCoy or Vinny Curry, or as I like to say, the people who the other people used to like. The big question is basically the same question that we said last week about the Tennessee Titans. Last week it was, what do we think of Mariota? This week is, what do we think of Winston? And is it a bigger year for him, or is it a bigger year for Bruce Arians?
Well, I think it's a big year for Winston because Arians has got a contract beyond this year. Winston has not. Now, when we've seen, the quarterbacks that Bruce Arians has been successful with, Ben Roethlisberger, Andrew Luck, Carson Palmer, these were all very, very good quarterbacks. I mean, Luck was a rookie, but you knew he had, you knew he was special coming in. Jameis Winston has flashed, but does he want it? Is it that important to him to be great, or is he happy just being good enough and, for want of a better word, arsing around? I don't know, because many offensive coaches, like people that I like to sit and listen to when they talk about offensive football, so like Bruce Arians, Mike Leach, they have said the one thing: once you get to the NFL, if you're inaccurate getting into the NFL, you're inaccurate. So I think it's just one of those. Occasionally, Big Arm thinks he can get him out of trouble. You can coach certain mechanics. You can coach things to make players better. Can you coach stupid out of them? And I don't know if Bruce Arians can.
Yeah, Jameis Winston is a funny quarterback, because you look at him, and where I think you look at, say we talk about users comparison to Marcus Mariota, which I'm sure those two aren't bored of at all yet. Mariota's very different in terms of, I'm not sure he's had the splash or massive games that Winston has had, or it doesn't feel like that. I always feel he's been shackled. I almost feel that Winston's the opposite. He's been almost allowed to do too much. He hasn't been curtailed in. Someone hasn't said you can't throw that ball. And they eventually attempted to do it a little bit last year by benching him for Ryan Fitzpatrick. But I'm not really sure that's beneficial. You just need... I feel like... And it happens a lot, and this isn't just an attack on Jameis Winston, but when has he not been the most talented person in the room?
He hasn't been pushed since high school.
When has that ever happened? He's always been the most talented person, and I think it's always come easy to him, and that's amazing. Like, that's a good thing. I'm not, but I just look and think, does that mean that sometimes someone's got to say, okay, James, you've got to knuckle down now? Because no offense, mate, don't care how good you were for the State Seminoles. Don't care. He won the national. It's cool. It's amazing. But like, you're not in the top 20 right now in quarterbacks. Like, that's what when you start, you're literally at the bottom. Now, you've showed some talent, but let's be honest, Neil. Like, you'll know better than me. What's his ADP? How many quarterbacks are being drafted before him? I would guess 25. maybe
It's probably
20 to 25 quarterbacks. So
Yeah.
I don't know how he expects to get paid as a franchise quarterback when there's 20 quarterbacks who are getting drafted before him in a fantasy draft.
Yeah, and the sharp fantasy owners, and the real sharps, the people they study this, they know that his win to loss record is not good. And I know it's the fallacy that number one picks go to bad teams. Yes, I know that. But look at the offensive playmakers they had last year. They had Mike Evans, one of only 3 wide receivers to have 5 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons to start his career. They had the best deep threat in the NFL. They had Chris Godwin. They had a breakout tight end. They still lost. Now, I know that's because their defense sucks. But if you're going to give your defense 30-yard fields to defend, what do you expect them to do?
I just look and think, Neil, I know, back to the Mariota thing. Like, do you think Mariota would quite like Mike Evans? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I think
what wide receivers has Marcus Mariota ever had to throw to? It's not
Kendall Wright.
It's not exactly a litany of great skill position players for Mariota. Winston's got them, but I think sometimes he's a forcer. He wants to make things happen because he knows he's got the talent. And I just think sometimes he needs a bit of coaching. I'm concerned when you start hearing things though that like Bruce Arians isn't involved in any of these conversations and he's leaving it all to the offensive coordinator whose name escapes me.
Leftwich.
Brian Leftwich, thank you, Neil. When you're like, that's great. And I'm sure Byron Leftwich is a wonderful coach, but I didn't hire Bruce Arians not to coach Jameis Winston.
The thing is as well, there's a couple of things with that. If you look at the Bucs coaching staff, and I don't mean just Arians and Todd Bowles and Brian Leftwich, of their major coaches, every single one of them is new to the team this year. Every single one of them. They owe Jameis Winston absolutely nothing. But also as well, just going back one more thing about Jameis Winston, when I say about, if you're inaccurate coming in, you're going to be inaccurate. Jameis Winston threw a lot of interceptions at FSU. So this isn't something that he's all of a sudden come into the NFL. It's been like, defenses are just, so much harder to read. No, you did this. You did this in college, but you got away with it because your defense got you the ball back. It's 5 years in now. You still haven't learned this. So I wonder, he's still going to be getting $20 million this year. Yeah, the incentive is go out and earn $20 million a year for the next 5 years. But does his brain work like that? Very little evidence we've seen so far suggests that it does.
Agreed. Let's move on to Fancy Neil, who's breaking out on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
See, the problem I have with the Buccaneers is that every one of their players seems to be going where I would take them. If you want to have a shot in the dark, Ronald Jones is going to be there the last round, but Ronald Jones was garbage last year, and the stats show that if you are a high pick like he was and you play as badly as he did as a rookie, you ain't amounting to anything. So he's a ridiculous dart throw. Peyton Barber's just a guy. If you want a piece of their passing attack, the cheap one would be Justin Watson, who seems to be getting a bit of buzz. He might be the third receiver, and they're going to go 3 wide, 4 wide, an awful lot. But Chris Godwin, you're going to have to pay top price to get him. I think at the moment he's going with his upside baked in. Mike Evans is the back end of the first round, start of the second. They're an expensive team because we know that they scored points last year. They should score points this year under Bruce Arians, and there should be a lot of fantasy goodness to come from them. They just won't win many games.
I'm obsessed with Mike Evans. Sorry, how early would you draft him if you had the choice?
If he's still there in the middle of the second round, I'm taking him. If I've started wide receiver, I got a wide receiver in the first round, I'd take my second wide receiver. I'd take Mike Evans, and I did.
Who did you take first then in this logic tree?
Well, let's see. If you're picking 6 or 7 in the first round, the big 4 running backs have gone.
Yeah.
So now you're starting to look at, Michael Thomas, Devontae Adams, Nuke Hopkins. If you get one of them and you can get Mike Evans on the way back, I think you've done a good job. You've done well in the first 2 rounds of your draft.
Agreed. Who's breaking down, Neil?
I don't use the word breaking down this because I think this guy's a stud. He's an absolute monster, and he has been ridiculously productive when he's been on the field in his first 2 seasons. OJ Howard averages 16.6 yards per reception for his career. And, just let me check. Yeah, that's quite good. He unfortunately has not played a full season yet. Now, I'm not using this. Bruce Arians doesn't use his tight end. Let's look at some of the world-beating tight ends he's used. Yes, shocking that Bruce Arians wasn't able to get tight end 1 finishes from Rob Hausler or Jared Christian or Darren Fells. I mean, he did get a bloody good season out of Heath Miller back in the day. But he never had an athlete like OJ Howard. But you're taking him at tight end 4? Really? In the 5th round? Really? No. Let's be serious here, people. He hasn't put it together in a full 16-game season. If he plays, he could do well. And if I could get OJ Howard later, I'd be ecstatic. But I'm not taking him in the 5th round. There's too many question marks. I wrote about this for Number Fire way back in the off-season. So you should go and find that, dig that out. Why I give you the reasons why you shouldn't pony up for OJ Howard. But that ADP scares the living piss out of me.
Neil, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers more likely to be discussed by draftniks in Week 17 in the Super Bowl or not at all?
Not at all.
I'm unbelievable, Neil. I'm the same. This probably means one thing.
They're going to Super Bowl.
Yeah. If you're listening to this show, find yourself some money as quickly as possible and bet it on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to make the Super Bowl, as me and Neil don't care about them this year, which is a change.
And I will tell Daggers this. I will tell Mr. Dagnall that we just don't care.
This will be as happy as he's been since England won the World Cup, I would assume. Neil, that's it for the NFC South. It sounds like both going Saints, Panthers, Falcons, Bucs. Is that right? Yeah.
I wouldn't hate you if you went Saints, Bucs, Falcons. Saints, Panthers, Falcons. Flip the 2 and 3 could be flipped round. Yeah. Bucs are 4th, and that's only the Bucs are 4th, but that's only because there aren't 5 teams in this division.
Do you expect one of those 3 teams to play in the NFC title game?
No.
I like it. That's a man. That's a man who's picked Rams Eagles in his head already. Neil, that's it for this week's show. Next week, the AFC West, and get to talk Big Red, which is always one of our favourite conversations.
Absolutely.
Before that, Neil, where can people catch you?
Well, you can catch me this week. I've been writing some pieces for Ravens Wire about the Baltimore Ravens. I have written about their 7 best pass catchers in their history, their 7 best undrafted free agents in their history, and what to expect from their tight ends in 2019. And I will also have a fantasy preview of all the Ravens skill players that count. That should be out by the end of this week.
That is breaking news on breaking news. Neil joining the Ravens nest, as the around the NFL crew would say.
Million outsider.
Million outsider, helping out the Ravens guys. I'm going to tell everybody in the UK to go to one place, thetouchdown.co.uk, a brand new website created by a lot of amazing guys over here in the UK. A lot of cool stuff up at the moment. Doing some season previews. At the moment, they're doing low-level power rankings, 21 to 32. Far too many teams in my division for my liking in that. They've a preview of Washington, Tennessee. There's a Big Ten conference preview, and then there's a individual review of Matt Corral, who is the quarterback for Ole Miss this coming season. There will be an AFC-related preview coming next week, which will involve yours truly. Neil, as always, a pleasure. I'm going to sit in a freezer for half an hour to cool down.
Yeah, I'm going to go wring out my underpants. Seriously, I'm absolutely, schwitzing away here.
What an image that is for the listeners. As always, these top guys are a little damp, but also out.